But I want to switch to our second topic because there is some increasing scrutiny on Conservative Leader Pierre Poilievre over allegations of foreign interference. Because this week, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he has a list of Conservatives who are engaged in, or this is important, or vulnerable to foreign influence. But Poilievre refuses to get security clearance to read that intelligence for himself, and other opposition leaders read it months ago.
It is ludicrous to me that someone who claims to want to be the Prime Minister of this country doesn't want to know of ongoing and serious threats that impact Canadians, that impact us. The only reason I think Pierre Poilievre is reluctant to take the information or get the information necessary is because he wants to protect his party above the country, and that is absolutely wrong.
We also heard today from Green Party leader Elizabeth May, who said Mr. Poilievre's choice to remain in ignorance of security and intelligence is more than troubling. Pierre Poilievre is the only person in a position to clear the air about the Conservative Party and any potential favours owed to foreign interests. CBC News also spoke to Conservative foreign affairs critic Michael Chong, and he said the Prime Minister needs to release the names of people tied to foreign interference. Chong also defended Poilievre's decision not to get security clearance to find out for himself.
Mr. Poilievre would be under a gag and prevented from talking about what he knew and who was involved. This is yet another process to distract from the very real problem of a government that has failed to take foreign interference seriously, failed to protect our democratic institutions and our elections.
Okay, that's what the politicians are saying. James, I had Ward Elcock and Richard Fadden on the show yesterday to talk about this. Two former CSIS directors, not political, not partisan. And they just flat out said there's no way to brief the Conservatives on this without Pierre Poilievre getting the security clearance. His chief of staff can have it, but he has no capacity to act on it because he can't fire candidates if that's what it takes, and he can't tell anyone about it because he would be sworn. That the only way to resolve this is for the leader to get the security clearance, and it doesn't have to be on everything. It can just be narrowly focused on the things that directly affect his party, and that would not limit his ability to hold the Prime Minister to account. How do we reconcile this? The politicians all say one thing, but the people like Rand CSIS say a totally different thing, that this is the only way forward for him.
It's legitimate for Michael Chong to point out that if Pierre Poilievre did get the security clearance and then he said, and then the Liberals could try to gag him from being able to disclose some of that information publicly. It's a legitimate argument to say that. Mm-hmm. Now that they've said it, get the security clearance and move forward. And so that if that does happen, you can say, see, this is what we were afraid of. The questions will still come, and they're still entirely appropriate for the Prime Minister, though. So I'm of the view that he should get it, and he should make the point that he's made now and then get the security clearance and move forward. That having been said, we have a serious problem now. We're going on more than 6 months now where this has been a clear and present conversation about a clear and present danger to our democratic system and its appearance to be above reproach when it comes to foreign interference. And the Prime Minister of this country has the responsibility to name the names of the people that he knows. To say that there are, it quotes, a number of Conservatives who are involved in this, well, one is a number. 35 is also a number. 50 is also a number. Well, to smear and slander an entire political party and movement and all of its associated candidates and activists is entirely wrong, beneath the office of the Prime Minister, and he should be clear about that. So I agree in part with the government and what they're saying, but on the other hand, the Prime Minister has the obligation as the current Prime Minister of the country to fix this, name names, and have some transparency and accountability.
Well, Cameron, I mean, there's a lot of experts who would say that the only way to name names would be to use parliamentary privilege to do it, and that would violate some pretty significant parliamentary norms and also put people's names out there without the ability to defend themselves. So there's that challenge too, right? But Cameron, like I listened to the Prime Minister in question period when Pierre Poilievre was sort of implying the Liberals were riddled with foreign interference, arguing it's unfair and it's based on intelligence, which is not evidence, but then he does what he did yesterday. Like, are they not using the same tactic against each other to impugn each other?
Well, ultimately, I think the whole debate has become too toxic and politicized, and both sides have been making political arguments about it. I mean, and that's sort of inescapable from politicians. But this issue in particular is, as James said, extremely important. It is complex and layered, but it's extremely important for the country to be able to grapple with a degree of thoughtfulness and in a measured way. I mean, I also think that it is, at this stage, kind of difficult and astonishing for the Conservatives not to move forward and actually get the information that is available to them if they choose to get it. I mean, part of being in a leadership position is making tough decisions and knowing difficult information that may be uncomfortable to know, but you can't. I don't see how they move forward without actually availing themselves of it. So it's unfortunately gotten to this stage, but I think the next step for the Conservatives, now everybody has called upon them, from experts to every single political party, to actually move forward. And James is right. They have made that argument. It is true to a degree, but it is also necessary given what's been said by the Prime Minister and given the level to which this issue has risen.
So, like, Jordan, I don't know what the intelligence shows. I have no idea. But we do have the redacted NSI COP report, which says India played a role and China played a role in past leadership campaigns. And Mr. Poilievre won a leadership campaign. Now, for whatever his reasons are, he won't get the clearance to see that intelligence because he says he doesn't want to be gagged by it. But it opens up all this vulnerability to suspicion and allegation that just getting the clearance could put to rest, and seeing it for yourself.
Yeah, I think you're quite right that it's increasingly awkward. It's increasingly uncomfortable for Poilievre to not get the security clearance. You know, I think that the Prime Minister really used this issue in a very partisan way this week. But by the same token, you know, he's also being accused of being a traitor to the country by Pierre Poilievre. So we've really seen this be kind of weaponized in a way that I think, frankly, people should find pretty troubling. This is a serious issue. This goes to Canadians' confidence in our electoral system, and it goes to some pretty serious national security issues here. So I think that what Jagmeet Singh has said in terms of putting country above party is probably a really important watchword for everybody as they move ahead on this. I think particularly for Poilievre, look, he wants to be Prime Minister. He's going to need to be dealing with these things. Yeah. It is not a good look when the problems are potentially in your own house to not get the information that you need to deal with that. Because at this point, even though it is true that he can say that, well, Liberals have these issues as well, the Prime Minister is able to say, I've seen that, I'm dealing with it. Right. He can't say the same, and I think that that's a really big credibility risk for him. Right,
and Shachi, on the, like, I know they want to be free to criticize the government of this, and I get the political imperative there, but Richard Fadden said, you can just be briefed on a very narrow set of issues. Like, he's never going to ask Justin Trudeau about India's meddling in the Conservative leadership race, so get briefed on that so you can maybe clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up there. Why do you think he won't do it? Is it just stubbornness, or what is it?
I don't know, and I don't expect Pierre Poilievre to listen to what the Prime Minister has to say on this, or listen to what Jagmeet Singh has to say on this, or indeed what Dick Fadden has to say on this. But what I do expect him to do is listen to his own base. And what's remarkable is 60% of Conservative voters, the last time we asked about this, said, yes, all leaders, let's underline that, all of them, including Pierre Poilievre, should take the security clearance, should be briefed, should read into the reports that are available to them once they have received their security clearance. So he's not even listening to his own supporters on this issue who are equally as seized by what's been happening as the rest of us. The calculation there must be, he doesn't think this is something that's going to move votes one way or the other. He clearly does not see this politically as a liability for him, but I think that's folly. And frankly, I think he should grow up, get the security clearance, and find out what he needs to find out.
So James, give you the last word on this. I mean, he is a Privy Councillor, like you. He's had security clearance before, so he's been through the process. Is it just that he doesn't want to give in to his critics, or what do you think the calculation is here?
Well, I think he's right that they will try to pinch him into trying to saying that he's violating the disclosure requirements and all that sort of stuff. But look, let's get back to first principles here. Where we spent this whole segment on a very important issue, scrutinizing the leader of the opposition. We have some serious national security issues that are being scrutinized by the Parliament of Canada. We're allocating resources, military resources, life-ending resources into regions of this world, whether it's in the Middle East and with the war in Europe, with the attack on Ukraine, whether it's our support for Israel and what's happening there. We have threats against Taiwan from China. We have our efforts to try to get to 2% of GDP on NATO spending with the United States. Very serious international issues and acts of terrorism and espionage are going on. And the Prime Minister has said that multiple members of Parliament from multiple parties are susceptible to not having the Canadian interest at heart. So whether Pierre should get the security clearance or not to challenge his own party, I think he should, and I think he should show more leadership within his party and outperform the Prime Minister on that front. But the more important issue for Canadians here is that the Prime Minister has a list of names of people whose integrity is compromised and whose principal allocation of their position of responsibility to defend Canada first, it has been smeared and is in compromise, and the Prime Minister should name those names and make sure that Canadians know who they are and ask the appropriate questions. So we can scrutinize Pierre Poilievre, but there's a clear and present danger here to Canada's international reputation, to our security partners, and the Prime Minister can fix it, and he's not. That's the much bigger issue here.
Okay. All right. Well, look, and we got to go because I got to get to a break and I got to guess. We have talked about that for a year on the show, a year and a half on the show, going back to the NSI COP report, all endless segments on it. It's just this was a new twist. This is why I just wanted to talk about this today. I mean, that is not an issue we have ignored, and we've talked about it on this panel before. So we'll talk about it again. I promise you, James. We got to say goodbye. Thank you to the Power Panel, Shotzi Curl, Cameron Ahmad, James Moore, and Jordan Leibniz.